Just stay right there, young man. Everybody, hold your horses. Hold your horses here. Yeah. Um, I very happy that Colin has been a part of our church. I think you've got 2 Sundays left before you leave. How? Oh, the end of April. Whew. Okay, so he'll for his school season's going to finish up the end of April. Then he's off tree planting up north for the summer again, but he'll be back next year. And but we're very happy that he's here. He's part of our church, and it's great that he gets a chance to get up here and to preach sometimes too. And we love him, don't we? Don't we love him? Yeah, we do. We do. We do. While I still have your attention, I want to remind everybody next week is our annual business meeting. It sounds very official, but basically it just means food. All right. So we're going to have a potluck all together and everybody's welcome. I mean, if you consider this your church, you're welcome to stay for the business part. Generally speaking, what we do is we do church service. After church, we set everything up. Everybody's bring some food. We set it up on the table out there. We pig out. And while everybody is kind of in the food coma stage, that's when I get up here and I rattle through the annual business meeting real quick. Hopefully no one notices any discrepancies. And then we wrap her up and out the door. So, but it's a time when we basically just share what happened in 2018, some ideas, some plans for the upcoming year. Also, you're free to ask questions about anything that you have interest in or concerns about and things like that. But it's usually it's a fun time and everybody's welcome. So please remember to cook something and come with an empty stomach because it's a good time. Yeah? Who likes potlucks in general? If you don't like to eat at a potluck, you're welcome just to sit in a chair and watch us all eat. We don't mind that as well, but it's going to be this coming Sunday. So without further ado, come hither, child.
All right. Yeah. It is actually really awesome to be here. I don't know how many college kids that are aspiring to be pastors get to speak often, but Aaron usually has me preach once a semester, so that's it's really cool. I do have to mention, I really hope this is better than last semester because I don't know if I told anybody this, but last semester I preached an unfinished sermon, and Tyler actually woke me up at 9:55 in my dorm room, and he was like, "Hey man, you ready to preach?" And I was like, "No." He's like, "Are you going to?" I guess. So I hope this one is a whole lot better than that one. But yeah, I want to say thank you so much for having me. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Colin Bobbian. I'm actually from Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. I've been going to Briarcrest. This is my 3rd year. And yeah, I'm in Christian ministry. I'm hoping to be a pastor one day. And so, yeah, just thank you for having me. Yeah, let's pray first. Yeah, Father, I thank you for the opportunity to come up here and to speak today. And I just pray that that you would be guiding my words, Lord, that they wouldn't be my words, but they would be your words, and that we would all come together and learn from this today, Lord. And yeah, I pray that you would just be blessing each and every one of us as we carry out through our week. In your name I pray. Okay, so January 29th, so about 2 months ago now, there was one woman who said just 3 little words. She said, "I forgive you." And, well, actually, there's probably multiple women who said that, because if I've learned anything in my short 21 years, guys tend to mess up lots, so women have to say, "I forgive you" lots. But this one opportunity was a little bit different. It was on more of a national stage, probably international, actually. Yeah, the woman who said it, her name was Christina Hogan. I'm not sure if you guys know who that is. She was the wife of Darcy Hogan, the coach of the Humboldt Broncos. And this was the court date set for the semi-driver. And she got up there and, yeah, she said those 3 words. She said, "I forgive you," to the bus driver, or to the semi-driver who was responsible for the death of her husband and the death of 15 other people. And in that moment, Christina's life wasn't made perfect again. Darcy still wasn't there. There was still hurt and disruption and just pain and suffering everywhere. And she does mention that in an interview that there's still pain and suffering in that. But that was more important that she said, I forgive you first. And I think a big part of why Christina was able to do this is that Christina is a Christian, and she knows that as a follower of Christ, she is called to forgive. And I'm not sure how often we realize how messy forgiveness is going to be, but it's so worth it to just continue and just follow through in our steps and just follow Christ through in that, his calling us to be a forgiving people, no matter the crime or punishment doled out against us. But with that being said, let's turn to the scriptures. So I'll be reading today from Matthew 18:21 to 35. If you'd like to turn there with me. Yeah, so it's Jesus teaching his disciples. Verse 21. Then Peter came to Jesus and asked, Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother when he sins against me? Up to 7 times? Jesus answered him, I tell you, not 7 times, but 77 times. Therefore, the kingdom of God is like a king who wanted to settle his accounts with his servants. As he began the settlement, a man who owed him 10,000 talents was brought to him. Since he was not able to pay, the master ordered that he and his wife and his children and all that he had be sold to repay the debt. The servant fell on his knees before him. Be patient with me, he begged, and I will pay back everything. The servant's master took pity on him, canceled the debt, and let him go. But when the servant went out, he found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 denarii. He grabbed him and began to choke him. Pay me back what you owe me, he demanded. His fellow servant fell to his knees and begged him, Be patient with me, and I will pay you back. But he refused. Instead, he went off and had the man thrown in prison until he could pay the debt. When the other servants saw what had happened, they were greatly distressed and went and told their master everything that had happened. Then the master called the servant in. You wicked servant, he said. I canceled that debt because you begged me to. Shouldn't you have had mercy on the fellow servant, just as I had on you? In anger, his master turned him over to the jailers to be tortured until he could pay back what he owed. This is how my heavenly Father will treat each of you unless you forgive your brother from your heart. Now, there's a few little things that kind of get caught up in here that I think are really, really helpful to clarify. So I'll just go through those first. The 7 that Peter uses, and then the 77, or in some translations, it's 70 times 7, that Jesus uses in a counterance to Peter. Those aren't just random numbers. So when Peter asks, how many times should I forgive someone? And he says 7 times, it's not him just pulling out a random number. He doesn't just because for us that might seem like a lot of times to forgive someone, or it might seem like a very little amount of times. What that number comes from, there's two main ideas. And so the one is sort of in Jewish history, 7 is sort of the number of completion and the number of wholeness. Just kind of like how the creation story, there's 6 days of creation plus the 1 day of rest, 7 days. And then there's a few other examples of that throughout the Old Testament. But there seems to be a more likely thing that Peter was referring to. So rabbis, Jewish teachers back in Jesus' time, they taught that you should forgive your brother 3 times. You shouldn't forgive your brother more than 3 times if he sins against you. And so what it seems like Peter's doing here is he's doing a lot of what he had seen Jesus do in the past. He is just expounding on what they've learned. And so he takes this 3 that he's been taught and that the Jewish rabbis have been teaching everybody. And he's like, Lord, how many times should I forgive somebody? Like more than that, like more than double 3 times. Like that seemed that like to Peter right now, he thinks that is a like astronomically large number. And what Jesus does is with his 77 or 70 times 7, so 490, there's a bit of a debate on what Jesus is saying there. I don't know Greek. I have no idea why they're debating that, but there seems to be a reason for there to be two separate numbers there. And I think the main point behind that is Jesus' number doesn't matter. It's just wicked more than Peter's and wicked more than the rabbis. It's so much more than you could possibly think about. And I think that's going to relate back later that it's like just astronomically more. He's like, it doesn't matter what the actual number is, just that it's so much more than what Peter was thinking. And then the units of measurement used. So, yeah, we're gonna come back to how the units aren't super important, but they're a way of an infinite God trying to relate to finite humans. And so, but at the same time, the wages or monetary units used don't relate to today exactly. I don't carry denaries or talents. I have a few talents, I like to think. So a denarii is actually, a denarii is what or was what would be considered a common day's wage, like a common laborer's wage in the Roman Empire around this time. And so scholars seem to think that 100 denarii, all of them seem to have different ideas on what 100 denarii would be worth. Some think $5 for 100 days work, so I'm not sure where he got that number. And another guy got $4,000. So those are, and then like there was varying numbers in between. I just went with the two on the farthest ends of the spectrum. And then a talent was a little bit different. So a talent was actually a amount that a soldier could carry on his back, which I think would probably vary even more. I'm not sure if the Roman Empire had a strict regiment of like, you have to be able to carry like 30 pounds, and that's going to be what a talent is, or what they labeled that to be. But scholars seem to think that 10,000 talents were either equal to hundreds of thousands of dollars or hundreds of billions of dollars. So a lot of money. I don't know if I'll make hundreds of thousands of dollars ever. I can almost guarantee you I will not make hundreds of billions of dollars. Yeah, so that just really helps to put in the perspective, somewhere between 4,000 and hundreds of billions. And then just for who's who in the parable. So it's actually, the parable is just a story that Jesus made up, potentially on the spot, but he uses fictional ideas to really help teach lessons to the disciples. And so in this parable, the king or the master, depends on the translation that you have, the king is God. And then at different times, we were actually both of the servants. I'm going to be referring to us more as the first servant because that operates on both ends there. But yeah, we actually fit into both roles. So the summer of 2017, I kind of felt like what I imagine this ruler in the story would have felt like when he went to settle his accounts and he comes back and realizes that someone has borrowed hundreds of billions of dollars and this guy has no way to pay it back. So a little backstory. My parents, they own and semi-operate, I guess would be a better word for it, a small scrapyard in Northern Ontario. My dad also works as a mechanic and my mom works part-time as a nanny. So not a ton of cash coming through the door. But yeah, mid-July, my dad was doing some work in the yard. And so he was just taking care of like sorting some copper and whatnot. And he realized there's like quite a bit of copper missing from this area. And so he goes through the rest of the yard and tallies up everything else. And there's copper missing from everywhere in the yard, like a lot of copper missing. Someone's obviously stealing copper, which is very sadly a pretty common thing to do nowadays. And so fast forward a few weeks, the police get involved. At one point, we catch somebody on our property. They almost run over my aunt and drive in my dad's brand new truck, causing thousands of dollars of damage. There was a lot of people arrested, and a court date was set for last October. So actually, probably right around the time I was preaching my almost finished sermon. So I was here at that point, and they didn't need me to fly back. I had a witness statement, but it was very similar to everybody else's. They looked it over and there was no need for me to come back so I could stay and finish my schooling for the semester. And I just tried to really push that out of my mind, tried not to deal with it because that caused so much pain for me. And so I don't even know what the sentencing was for these guys. I wasn't even worried about it because every time I thought about it, it got me angry. It got me upset. It caused a lot of bitterness in my life. And yeah, so as of that court date in October, the legal system was finished with the case. The thieves had their sentence handed to them. They were dealing with that, however that went about. The police were finishing up paperwork, and other than that, it was all finished. Yet there's still this mess. My parents are still down approximately $30,000. My dad has so much anxiety about people coming onto our property and stealing stuff. He can barely leave for a weekend to take a vacation. And it didn't so much bother me that they'd lost all that money. That made me upset. But what bothered me is that they essentially broke my dad. He can, even now, he still struggles to leave for a week, and he still struggles to go home. And that causes, even like writing this sermon, and even, I mean, this is like the fourth time I've preached this. There's just actually a crowd this time. Even now, just preaching about it, it's gotten a lot better, but there's still like a little bit, like my heart rate rises. I still get a little bit angry. I still get a little upset about it. And yeah, just it's so hard to let go of those things. And I knew in the moment that it happened, like as I was writing out I missed work that morning because after we caught the guy, I had to write out my witness statement. And as I was writing out, I knew that I had to forgive him. Yet the one Christian in my family, the kid aspiring to be a pastor, is struggling with forgiveness. How can I ever expect my dad to do that? How can I expect the rest of my family to do that after they've been hurt so much? And I think something that reading this parable actually made me realize a lot is we are very much like that first servant. We are owed a debt by somebody. There's a good chance that somebody in your life has wronged you, because we're all humans and we all have fault. And little or great, we are owed a debt. My parents' debt is pretty large that they are owed by these people. Whether or not they'll ever get it back, that's highly doubtable. But we've still been wronged by others. Those are two facts that we can just come across right now. And I think we can all agree that we have been wronged and it does hurt. But fixating on this isn't actually going to change anything. Fixating on this in there and holding this in isn't going to change things, isn't going to actually bring about any healing. It's when you actually look to forgiveness for this. Now, that doesn't mean that's actually easy to let go of. Like I said, I struggled to write this sermon. I struggled to use this as the story I was going to use. I mean, I knew I had to, but I struggled with it so much. And as I was writing it, I was thinking about how much hurt that's caused me. And there are people who have experienced so much more hurt than I have. Christina Hogan has probably got through a lot worse than my parents losing a lot of money and me being really angry about it. There's probably people who have gone through way worse times than what Christina Hogan's gone through. There are people who've gone through so much worse. And I try to understand that, because if I'm that angry over something that I may see as large but is so small, how do other people look towards that? And how do other people actually try and seek forgiveness? And I think really understanding that it's a messy situation. Forgiveness is not an easy situation. Forgiveness is not an easy time. It's not just, it seems so clean and simple for us to just understand when we read our Bibles, but just walking through it and actually living through trying to come to forgiveness can be so difficult. And I think something that finally started to hit me is that it's really only by trusting in God that we can come to forgiving a person, that we can come to forgive a person, and we can come to trusting them, or putting trust back in people, and come back to a stage where we are actually loving people again. Because to try and do that on our own after you've been hurt so bad, I can't imagine going through like some of the worst things that people experience in life. And I think something that really helps reel it back in is when you look at, like the first servant again, more importantly, the massive debt that we owed. There are debts that are owed to us. They're great, they're small, all different shapes and sizes. But the one that we owe is astronomical. It is so big that, like, yeah, what those thieves did to me and my family, what happened with Christina Hogan, doesn't hold a match to what we do to God every single day, to what I do to God every single day. In the creation story, we are given a command to be fruitful, to fill the earth and subdue it, but to be fruitful. And what that looks like today is following the teachings of Jesus. And we have to stick to that and lean into following those teachings. And I fail to do that every single day. Every day I I fail to do that. Some days I have good days. Some days I have really good days where I was like, wow, I did a really good job following Jesus today. I still sucked at least 1 point, probably a lot. And yeah, every day that's something we fail for. And I think understanding that the atonement for our failings and to act that it is actually out of our reach. There's no way we can actually reach the atonement. It is hundreds of billions of dollars, and we are working as day laborers or in the oil fields. Sure, we're going to make $100,000 a year, but we're never going to make hundreds of billions to pay back. But all that being said, the King of the universe, our King, stepped down from his throne, took care of it all. A debt that there is no way we can ever possibly repay. He was willing to step down and take care of it. Say it is forgiven. It is washed away. Do not think about it. And I think all we can do, I think all that I can do, I know all that I can do in return is to just throw myself at his feet and just continue to beg for forgiveness in all of those times that I mess up. And I think something that really comes across is not understanding how stark this contrast is sometimes, especially when we're feeling how much we've been wronged. We don't understand how much we've been hurt, or we don't understand how much hurt we have caused when we're only thinking internally about how much we've been hurt. But to put it into a slight perspective, the numbers don't matter much, but they do in us understanding. So if we were to put the $4,000 that is owed to us into minutes, that was Friday afternoon when everyone was getting off work. To put the $1 billion ish somewhere in there for talents that we owe to Jesus and we owe to God, 1 billion minutes ago was Jesus walking around preaching. That's how vast of a difference it is. And I think it's not, the point is not the money. The point is not the time measurement. The point is not units of measurement. The point is the vast difference that we can't actually comprehend. That one is material. One is on this earth. One is a small or large debt that is owed to us. But in the eyes of what we owe to the Creator, it is so small. It is minuscule. It shouldn't even exist. Yet it does, because we are broken people. I don't want you to think that just because we owe God such a great debt that people wronging us shouldn't matter. That does matter, and that is hurtful, and that is something of human nature that we have to walk through. But even though that there's that material one, this other debt that we owed is beyond our capable to even realize how big it is. But I hope that today we can all realize that our God is a good King. Our God is a faithful King and a loving King, and he is willing to pardon those as wrongfully as we have treated him, as wrongfully as we will treat him. He is consistently willing to pardon us and to love us, and just to lean into that love, I think, is something that we all just really need to focus on. And I really hope we can realize that today. So like we did last week, I'm gonna have everybody stand as we pray in closing, because it's weird if you all sit there and look at me after I'm done preaching. But today I thought we'd do something a little different. So we're gonna pray the Lord's Prayer together. So I'll start us off and follow along if you know. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Thank you guys so much. Have a great week.